So some of you in the comments of my videos have asked me if, as a native Italian speaker and a Sicilian on top of that, is if I can understand Corsican, because of course, for those who don't know, Sicily or Sicilia, Sardinia or Sardegna, and Corsica are the three islands right west and south of Italy, with the only distinction that while Sardinia and Sicily are both Italian, right now Corsica belongs to the French. Not sure they're very happy about it though, but we're not going to go into that. Let's remain within linguistics. Okay, so let's see if we can find some people speaking Corsican and let's see if I can understand it.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo Paolo. Buongiorno, mi chiamo Paolo. Sono qui in Furiani, vicino a Bastia. Si può vedere da me un paese, a Monca. Oggi sono veramente felice di poter fare la lingua corsa. Allora, voglio parlare un corso cismontinco, c'è un corso che si parla in Cismonte, a Corsica Soprana, perché ci sono parecchie varietà di lingua tra regioni, soprattutto tra Corsica Soprana, Cismonte e Sultana, Pumonte.
Hey, so far, I'm going to say 95%. I'm only missing a couple of words, possibly because of the wind. Okay, that's impressive. I think it's the first time I've ever heard the lingua corsa, so Corsican. That is insane. It sounds like an Italian with a regional accent. Like if you told me this is a dialect of Italian, I would immediately believe you. That is insane.
Non ci pronunciamo mica sempre il stesso.
Non ci pronunciamo mica sempre il stesso. Yeah, we don't always pronounce the same. I understand everything. What?
Perché queste parole e congiugazione cambiano appena.
100%.
E ci sono altre piccole differenze.
It sounds like he's speaking Italian. What on earth?
Ma quantunque poi in preme quali varietà di un corso adobrano, tutti i corsi si capiscono in una corsica sana. E io uso corso, ma la lingua materna è il francese. Perché oggi la Corsica è una regione francese. Si può fare un po' di storia. A mezzo secolo di Rumi, nel 700, Pasquale Paoli proclamò l'indipendenza dell'isola dalla Repubblica di Genova.
That is insane. So he's a native speaker of French. Of course, again, I'm understanding 100%. So literally, those few words that I missed was because of the freaking wind. But his language is clearly a lot closer. I mean, the Corsican language is 100% a lot closer to Italian. It's a lot easier for me to understand than it would be if he were to speak French. Although then again, I have studied French. But for a moment, imagining that I didn't, this is mind-blowing.
È così che è nata la Repubblica Corsa, con la sua Costituzione considerata come la prima Costituzione democratica della storia moderna. E essendo impudente per far piegare la Corsica, i genovesi hanno chiesto l'aiuto di un potente regno di Francia. È così che la Francia ha conquistato la Corsica, e per la sicura senza mai rendere isola a Genova, come era inteso. Ma è soltanto da poi a lei di 1852 che il francese è diventato la lingua ufficiale della Corsica. Sta lei ha rimosso all'italiano lo statuto di lingua ufficiale della Corsica per l'amministrazione, perché non si parlava corso, ma tutti i documenti ufficiali erano scritti in lingua italiana.
That is... Okay, so we are almost 2 minutes in. I'm going to let him speak for another 30 seconds uninterrupted. But as I say, so far, 100% I could communicate with this guy if I used Italian or even Sicilian. Well, I don't know. Maybe. But in general, if I used Italian and he spoke back in Corsican, 100%, no problem. No problem whatsoever. If you're also watching from a different area of Italy, let me know if you can also understand everything like me, or if it might be dependent on the region perhaps. But I would imagine if you speak standard Italian, you will understand him.
Bella sicura, i corsi hanno continuato a parlare la lingua corsa. Ma a scuola, tutti i zitelli imparavano il francese e il corso era completamente proibito. Un mio babone mi diceva che lui e gli altri zitelli erano riproverati da un maestro quando parlavano corso, anche fuori di scuola. È così che poco a poco la lingua è stata meno tramandata, anche a casa tra genitori e zitelli. E soprattutto dopo la seconda guerra, i genitori che parlavano bene francese e corso hanno parlato in maggior parte francese ai suoi zitelli. Era così. a Stevica, ci volia che i genitori parlino francese ai zideli. Allora, oggi è differente. Curi a questo, iniziato circa 1970, la lingua e la cultura corsa sono diventate davvero importanti nella società corsa. La lingua è una imparata a scuola, penso mica sai, che è detta, ma è capita che un livello è vallato comparato ai tempi fa.
This is impressive. Okay, so up to this point, yes, I'm understanding everything. It feels like it's a mixture between various regional varieties of Italian. So, of course, there is some northern in there with the way he pronounces the S in intervocalic position. Sounds more northern. It sounds quite close to some varieties of Sardinian. It also has some common areas with some varieties of Sicilian, like the way he uses u as an article that sounds the same as Sicilian. And it's such a mixture. And then when he says, the way he said scuola, he said scola, that sounds like something that you would hear between southern regions of Italy all the way up to the center. It basically is like it's a mix of a lot of regional varieties of center, north, and south, all mixed into one. And also sometimes I could tell a little bit of intonation because of this rising terminals and rising tones that he has, which would be, sometimes makes it sound a slightly Portuguese, but not enough to be closer to Portuguese. This is, I'm just trying to figure, it's the first time I ever hear Corsican in my life. And the fact that I can understand it 100% is insane. The fact that, yeah, of course, administrative language initially was Italian, then switched into French, and now they have been scolded in school for using Corsican, which is now nonsense, by the way. People should be able to maintain their own cultural identities rather than being scolded. It's good. Yeah, have a bilingual population. There's nothing wrong with that. But anyways, I'm going into social linguistics, which we are here just for the linguistics, I suppose. But let's continue.
E io, i miei genitori mi hanno sempre parlato francese, ma comunque si può dire che il corso è la mia seconda lingua materna.
Yeah, sure.
E perché da zidello ho sempre inteso parlare corso.
So, zidellu to mean child, I'm 100% sure that it's somewhere in some dialects, in some regions of Italy, they say it like that. That's the only word that I'm only understanding because of the context. So ever since I was a child, my parents spoke to me. Obviously, even if I don't understand child, and I say, ever since I was my parents spoke to me in these other languages. So growing up, obviously you understand that means child, even if what I just said is it doesn't matter. But it's funny because zitello in Sicilian exists too, but it means some like an unmarried, like if you don't have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or if you're not married, that's kind of a false friend. But given the context, I understand it perfectly anyways. And so far, that's the only word that I didn't understand directly.
In dumo paese, quando zidelo giocava a chinna, con le becce me paesane, ascoltando musica corsa.
Now I didn't understand the word for game. Chinna, I don't understand that one, but everything else I understood.
E soprattutto, ascoltando mo babone e mo mammone, che so balani. E anche se mi parlavano sempre in francese, tra elli parlavano sempre corso. Dopo, in scuola primaria, c'erano 2 lezioni di corso, e in un collegio e liceo non era mica possibile di pigliare il corso come lingua aveva. Studiare il corso era solamente un'opzione. Miseria ben iscritto, ma come va a dire latino e che mi piace assai, un po' di amica pigliatrami in 2. Sapete com'è? Troppo castighi per l'amministrazione.
So interesting. There is something else he said here that I didn't want to, so let me see, we are on 3 minutes 56, remember that. Babone and mammone, to say granddad or grandfather and grandmother, it sounds almost endearing, like I wouldn't say like that, we have nonno, nonna, but I can understand it because babbo is father, or it's one way to say it. We don't really use it in the south, but it's quite commonly used in the north. And mamma, obviously, is mother. So babone, mammone, to mean like big mum and big dad, I understand it. So even if I wouldn't say it like that, and it's the first time I've ever heard that in my life, I can put two and two together due to the fact that all the words exist in at least some varieties of Italian. And so, yeah, I could recognize that one. Let me see. How did he say?
Come collegio e liceo.
Collegio e liceo. So interesting that liceo, to mean high school, we say liceo. So he's just switching an O at the end for a U, which is something that to me is normal because in Sicilian we do it a lot. So to me it's perfectly fine. And when it comes to collegio to mean middle school, no, I wouldn't. Collegio, I would have, I mean, I guess. I wouldn't say it like that, but whatever. I would say scuola media to mean middle school. And maybe he does say that way too.
Non era mica possibile di pigliare un corso come lingua.
Non era mica possibile. Yeah, non era mica possibile. It's the same as Italian. That's insane. Possibile becomes possibile, but still, it's like one vowel switch between an O and a U, and that's it. That's the only difference. How does he say living language? Let me see.
Come lingua aveva. Collegio e liceo. Non era mica possibile di pigliare un corso come lingua aveva.
Come lingua viva. Yeah, interesting. He does have the V pronounced as a W. Maybe that's a conservative feature from classical Latin pronunciation. 100% understandable, yes. All right, let's go back to where we were, 357. And let's go.
Comunque abbiamo imparato l'inglese e l'italiano. Studiare l'italiano era interessante. Ciò che sapevo nel corso mi ha aiutato per l'italiano, perché le due lingue si assomigliano.
Sì.
Ma ci sono anche differenze più maggiori che solo il vocabolario.
Più mayor instead of to say more major. Interesting.
Prime volte mi sbagliava sempre e gigia parole e formulazioni corse non si gigiano mica in italiano.
Gigiano to say dicono. Yeah, that one is, again, I understand it from the context, but if you just gave me the word on its own, I wouldn't recognize it. But if you put it in context, due to the fact that I recognize everything and it's kind of similar, dicono, gigiano, okay, I can get it. Interesting.
Mi ricordo che amo professore di italiano mi ripeteva quando digia una roba corsa mica italiano, digia in francese, regionalismo. Per la bene, spero che il corso si svilupperà sempre di più. Noi giovani ci vorremmo tramandare la lingua industriale ai nostri zitelli o futuri zitelli, perché quando sono giovani imparano tanto presto. Io, guarda a me, che ho solo inteso. Allora pensate se i miei genitori mi avessero parlato corso. Non pretendo mica di parlare come un vecchio corso montagnolo, ma io e anche tutti quelli che parlano mica ottimamente il corso, potremmo quantunque tramandare la lingua.
Quantunque. It's so interesting because quantunque, and there was another one that he said earlier on. Don't remember what it was, but I'll see if I can find it. Sometimes he uses these words like quantunque. It sounds poetic and almost archaic to me. Like you can say it in Italian, but it's to give you an idea, it sounds a bit like you, instead of saying really in English, saying verily. Like in the Bible, verily I say unto you. That's what it counts. So it's fascinating. I mean, that's something that happens in Sicilian as well. Like the verb to buy in modern Italian is comprare, and that's, you use that in Sicily as well, because in Sicily we switch between Italian and Sicilian. But the Sicilian word is accattare, which is actually very close to the way they say it in Naples too, and other southern regions. I wouldn't be surprised if they use it too, because accattare is in the Bible. That's like, because it's kind of an archaic sounding word in Italian. So it's not that it doesn't exist in Italian, it's that now it's been changed into a more modern sounding word, whereas islands tend to maintain a traditional vocabulary that might sound archaic otherwise if used in the Italian language.
Se già zitelli, i nostri figlioli, sapessero parlare corso allo stesso livello che noi avevamo qua, sarebbe una riuscita.
So he used, apart from this word, zitelli, to say children, he said figlioli, which sounds like figlioli, and that one I can understand. But once again, a little old sounding. Maybe they use it in Tuscany. I do believe they use it in Tuscany to say il mio figliolo. In Sicily, I would say, well, in Italian, I would say mio figlio, but in Sicilian, I would say me figlio. So it's still closer, it's kind of shorter, if you will.
E anche tra di noi non parliamo mica abbastanza corso, perché a Hawaii i giovanotti hanno paura di mica parlare abbastanza bene, ma non ci vuole mica avere vergogna di sbagliarsi, è sbagliando che la si impara. Allora,
see the way he said sbagliando? Sbagliando. It sounded a little Portuguese, to me at least. Did you get that? But it's interesting because that kind of intonation happens in Genoa, and due to the it's Genoese is probably the closest in terms of pronunciation to Portuguese of all Italian varieties. That's my opinion. Due to the fact that there are historical ties between Corsica and Genoa as a maritime power, particularly in the Middle Ages and further down, then it's interesting that that could be the reason. I'm not saying that it necessarily sounds, as I say, sometimes he sounds Sicilian, sometimes he sounds a little central Italian, sometimes he gives me northern feels, and other times you can tell there is a strong connection to Sardinia, which is the one that makes more sense. But the way he does the ing, so the present progressive, when he does that specifically, I think I've identified as the section that to me then starts sounding a little Portuguese, and in fact Brazilian Portuguese, believe it or not.
Ci tocca adoprare la lingua nostrale e come dice sta famosa canzone corsa, lotta gioventù, la bene si tu. Ecco, hai già sai parlato, a ringraziavi per aver figiulato sto filmetto e a bedegi.
Abedegi instead of arrivederci. Abedegi. I wouldn't recognize abedegi. So there is the occasional word I don't understand, but then again, it's a different language. So I'm going to say 99%. 99%, guys. That is absolutely mind-blowing. Excellent job, by the way, to the guy who wanting to preserve the tradition of his own. Yeah, why does France own Corsica? Oh, maybe we could watch that one for the History Channel. Nationalism in Corsican growing amid calls for autonomy. They're probably sick of having to deal with French. No disrespect to the French, I'm just having a good time. Could this island be Europe's newest country? Yeah, the island on its own, I kind of doubt it. I wonder how their French sounds like. Let's see if this guy's going to say something.
Full independence may still be a distant dream, but nationalism has found a renewed voice on this island. Not so long ago, just singing the Corsican national anthem was enough to get you beaten up by the French police here.
Oh no.
Now the islanders are demanding official status for their language.
Of course, yeah.
The expression of Corsican roots was rapidly merged.
So they're translating for us. I don't need that. All right. Anyways, I'm definitely going to look deeper into this. So consider this one as a little bit of a short introduction and first exposure when it comes to me and the Corsican, or at least one of the different varieties. As the gentleman explained to us, there are multiple varieties, but they can all understand each other as they speak to each other. They just have probably different accents. Sometimes they might have different vocabulary choice. Anyways, the one that I listened to today, 99%. 99%. As a native Italian speaker, I understood everything. And in fact, sometimes, as I say, the using of the U as the article or the U in substitution of the O at the end of a word made it even closer to my native variety of regional languages, which would be Sicilian. And other times it sounded like a little bit of Genoese, if you will, and a little bit of Sardinian. Very interesting language. I see that Ecolinguist has a video talking about Corsican language, and then he asks, can Spanish, Romanian, and I imagine Italian understand it? That could be interesting to check out. But maybe I'd be more interested in looking at the history of the Corsican language, and if you guys are interested in this, noble ones, then let me know, and I might do my own dedicated researched video, and maybe we could do, you know what, if you let me, I probably should say this at the beginning of the video rather than the end, but then again, the core is probably watching still. If you're interested, I could make a dedicated episode on the 3 languages of the islands. So Corsican, Sardinian, and Sicilian, boom, all into one massive video. It will take some time to research and put together, but if it's something you'd be interested in, I'll mention it on other videos as well, maybe towards the beginning, letting people know that we have had this idea together, and we can see how that goes. We can go from there. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.